The Video Game Hero. Story by Dan Rainford. Illustrations by Gary Undercuffler. Chapter 1. Welcome to Myrtle City. Jack Parks never imagined that video games would make him a hero, but in the end, that's exactly what they did. Okay, so Jack didn't rescue a bunch of people from the top floor of a burning building or step in front of a speeding, out-of-control bus to save a neighbor's cat. Frankly, Jack wasn't that kind of hero. Still, you have to remember, there are many different types of heroes. There are certain basic, mundane acts that require an extraordinary amount of courage to perform. You don't have to dodge some catastrophe, and you don't have to wear a cape and tights or fly through the sky in order to be heroic. Real-life heroism can be much smaller in scope and much tougher to pigeonhole. On the surface, none of the things that Jack did last year seem all that miraculous. But if you asked any of the other kids at Starkington Elementary School about it, as far as they were concerned, Jack was amazing. Jack was larger than life, titanic. Jack was a hero to them. In the end, that's all that matters. Heroism isn't a simple, objective thing. It's deeply subjective. If Jack was a hero to the other kids, then that made him a real hero. That's the way it works, at least most of the time. The series of events kicked off about a year ago. It was January, and Jack had just returned to school after winter vacation. To be honest, he wasn't all that happy about it. Being a fifth grader at Starkington Elementary School was far from glamorous. Starkington is located in not-so-beautiful downtown Myrtle City. Honestly, it isn't exactly the nicest city on the West Coast. It's located in Central California, and it's not nearly as large or interesting as cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, or San Diego. It isn't exactly the kind of place people flock to. Jack certainly didn't like it, and he wasn't alone because 9 out of every 10 people who lived in Myrtle City weren't particularly keen on the place. It's just not the type of place you fall in love with. Most people who live in Myrtle City are there because that's where they can afford to live. One of the few things that Myrtle City has going for it is its really low cost of living. In other words, it's very affordable, and most people who live in Myrtle City don't have a lot of money to spare. There isn't much crime in Myrtle City. That's one of the other good things about it. The people who live there are industrious and hard-working, so crime, well, there just isn't much of it, and that's certainly a good thing. All the same, it's a pretty dreary place. All the buildings look the same, and all the streets look the same too. Honestly, if you're not familiar with the local geography, it can be very easy to get lost in Myrtle City. You turn off Ridge Street onto Battleship Street, but suddenly you're confused. Isn't that the same building you passed 5 minutes ago? Or does it just look like the building you passed 5 minutes ago? Luckily, Jack didn't have that problem. He had lived in Myrtle City his entire life, so even if the tall gray buildings on Roper Road looked exactly like the tall gray buildings on Witherspoon Avenue, Jack didn't have any trouble telling them apart. Myrtle City also had a big mix of races, religions, and ethnicities. As it happened, Jack and his family were African American, but in their apartment building were Christians, Muslims, and Jews, Irish and Indians, Samoans and Portuguese, Russians and Brazilians. It was a really diverse place. That was a good thing, actually. Residents of Myrtle City tended to get along with each other well, regardless of their backgrounds. Most of them had been through tough times, and they understood each other. Jack lived in the tall, dingy building at 222 West Hennington Circle. It's a fancy-sounding address, but there was nothing fancy about the place itself. Jack shared a cramped 3-room apartment with his father, Davin, and his younger brother, Augustus. It was an incredibly tidy place, since his dad was something of a neat freak, but it was tiny. Jack's father slept in the living room, while Jack and his brother shared the small bedroom. Jack was smart and hard-working. He did well in school, regardless of the class. His grades in English were as good as his grades in math, and his science and social studies marks weren't too shabby either. Although most of the other kids liked him, Jack...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?